I was reborn 1 month before the most miserable day of my life. The day my fiancé ran away with another man. The day my company was stolen, my parents were humiliated in front of hundreds of people. The day I died. And the worst part? I never saw it coming. That day, I was standing at the altar. Hundreds of guests filled the ballroom. White roses covered every table. A live orchestra waited beside the stage. Everything looked perfect. It should have been the happiest day of my life. Instead, it became the day that destroyed me. The ceremony was supposed to begin at 2 o'clock. At first, nobody noticed anything was wrong. After 10 minutes, people smiled. Classic Emily, someone joked. She's always late. I even smiled. Emily had never been punctual. She was probably fixing her makeup or maybe changing her dress. There were dozens of reasonable explanations. At least, that's what I told myself. 40 minutes passed. The smiles started disappearing. The whispers began. I checked my phone. No messages, no calls, nothing. My best man walked over. "You okay?" I forced a smile. "Yeah." He didn't look convinced. Neither was I. Across the room, my mother sat in the front row. She was trying so hard to look happy, trying so hard to pretend nothing was wrong. But I could see it, the worry in her eyes, the fear, the embarrassment. Every few seconds she looked toward the entrance, waiting for Emily, waiting for her future daughter-in-law, waiting for the ceremony to begin. My father sat beside her, silent, stiff, his jaw clenched. For the first time in my life, he wouldn't look me in the eyes. That hurt, because everyone in that room was starting to realize something I wasn't ready to admit. Emily wasn't coming. An hour passed. The orchestra had stopped playing. The conversations had become whispers. Guests were checking their phones, checking their watches, looking at me. A little girl near the front asked loudly, "Mommy, where's the bride?" The room went quiet. Her mother immediately pulled her closer. Everyone heard it. Everyone was thinking the same thing. Where was the bride? I called Emily again, straight to voicemail. My stomach twisted. For 4 years, Emily had always answered my calls, even when she was busy. But today, nothing. Not a single response. Then my phone vibrated. My heart immediately jumped. Emily. It had to be Emily. I looked down. It wasn't her. It was a social media notification. Someone had tagged me. I almost ignored it. Then another notification appeared, and another. My best man frowned. "Jack?" I looked up. His face had turned pale, very pale. Slowly, he handed me his phone. "Don't." I frowned. "Don't what?" His voice barely came out. "Don't look." The moment he said that, I knew. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. I took the phone from his hand, and my entire world collapsed. It was an image, posted 9 minutes earlier in an airport terminal. Emily stood near the departure gate, still wearing the honeymoon dress I had bought for her, still wearing the engagement ring I gave her. But she wasn't alone. She was holding another man's hand, Jason Reed, her first love, the man she always told me not to worry about, the man she promised was ancient history, the man she swore meant nothing. My vision blurred. I looked again. Maybe it was edited. Maybe it was fake. Maybe someone was trying to ruin our wedding. Maybe... Then I saw the timestamp. 9 minutes ago. My chest tightened. I read the caption. "I always knew we were meant to be together." Dozens of likes and comments. People congratulating them, calling them soulmates. I felt sick. 4 years together. 4 years of plans, of promises, and apparently none of it mattered. The ballroom erupted. People were pulling out their phones, whispering, staring. Some looked shocked. Some looked uncomfortable. Others sorry for me. That was the worst part. Pity. I wasn't a groom anymore. I was the poor idiot whose fiancé ran away on their wedding day. I turned toward the front row. My mother was crying. Not quietly, not discreetly. Crying. The kind of crying that comes from genuine heartbreak. My father stood up so suddenly his chair nearly fell over. For a moment he looked like he wanted to punch someone, but there was nobody to punch, because the person who destroyed us was already halfway to another country. I wanted to scream. I wanted answers. I wanted someone to tell me this wasn't real. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. For some reason I answered. A few seconds of silence. Then, "Jack?" It was Emily. The moment I heard her voice, every muscle in my body tensed. The ballroom, the guests, everything disappeared. There was only her voice. "Where are you?" I asked. A long pause. Then she whispered, "I'm sorry." I laughed. A broken laugh, The kind of laugh that sounds more like pain. Sorry? After humiliating me in front of hundreds of people? After destroying our wedding? After destroying my family? I swallowed hard. Where are you? I asked again. Another pause. Then I heard it. An airport announcement. A boarding call. People rolling suitcases. My eyes closed. Of course. The airport. Exactly where everyone already knew she was. Emily. My voice became strangely calm. Too calm. Tell me one thing. Did you ever love me? For several seconds, she didn't answer. And somehow those seconds hurt more than everything else, because she was thinking about it, actually thinking about it. Finally, she spoke. I did. Past tense. Not I do, not I still do, not I love you, just I did. The single word was like a punch to the face, because at that moment I realized something. She had already left me long ago. Today was simply the day she decided to tell me. Then she spoke again. Jason is the person I was supposed to be with. Something inside me broke. Completely. I ended the call. I didn't yell, I didn't beg, I didn't ask why, because suddenly I didn't have the strength. I just stood there, staring at the screen. The room around me felt distant. My mother's crying sounded distant. The guests sounded distant. Everything sounded distant. All I could hear was, I did. Past tense, 4 years reduced to 2 words. Then my phone rang again. This time I recognized the name. Sophia Bennett, my operations director, my closest friend inside the company, one of the few people I trusted completely. The moment I answered, I heard panic in her voice. Jack? What happened? I said. Please tell me you're sitting down. Fear immediately crawled into my chest. Sophia! Her breathing was shaky, almost desperate. Sophia, what happened? Several seconds passed, then she finally said it. Jack, Emily sold the company. For a second, I thought I heard her wrong. What? Emily sold the company. I laughed because it was impossible, absolutely impossible. What are you talking about? She transferred ownership shares last week. She forged authorization documents and sold the controlling stake this morning. Every answer came out weaker. Every answer came out more desperate, because deep down, I already knew. Sophia was crying now, actually crying. Jack, the board already approved everything. My knees nearly gave out. No! Jason's investment group bought the controlling shares. My breathing became shallow. The ballroom tilted. The company wasn't just a business. It was my life. 7 years. 7 years of 18-hour workdays. 7 years of sacrifices. 7 years of building something from nothing. And now it was gone. Then Sophia delivered the final blow, the one that killed me, literally. Jack, by tomorrow you won't own anything. I was in deep silence. Then she added, You're bankrupt. I couldn't breathe. My company, my future, my fiancé, everything is gone. A violent pain exploded inside my chest. I grabbed the altar. The phone slipped from my hand. People started screaming. Someone shouted my name. I heard my mother crying. I heard Sophia screaming through the phone, Jack! But it was already too late. As I collapsed toward the floor, only one thought remained. If only I had seen the truth sooner. If only I had one more chance. Just one. Then darkness swallowed everything. I suddenly sat upright in bed, gasping for air. Sweat covered my entire body. My heart pounded violently against my ribs. For several seconds, I couldn't understand where I was. My hands trembled as I grabbed my phone. The date appeared on the screen, and my entire body froze. Exactly 1 month before the wedding, before Emily abandoned me, before she stole my company and destroyed my life. A notification appeared. Emily. Good morning, babe. I stared at the message for a very long time. Then I slowly smiled, because this time I knew the truth. This time I knew exactly who Emily Parker really was. And this time I wasn't the man who would die at that altar. I was the man who would bury her dreams before she could bury mine. And Emily had no idea what was coming. A second message from Emily. Don't forget dinner tonight. I miss you. I stared at Emily's messages for a long time. In my previous life, those messages made me smile. I would read them during meetings, before sleeping, whenever work became stressful. Back then, I thought I was one of the luckiest men alive. I was wrong, because now I knew exactly who sent those messages. A liar, a thief, a woman who would stand at an airport holding another man's hand while I stood alone at the altar.
a woman who would help destroy everything I had spent years building. I put the phone down and took a deep breath. 1 month, that was all I had. 30 days before Emily ruined my life and stole my company, before I died on the floor of my own wedding. But something was bothering me. A memory, a small one, so small that in my previous life I never paid attention to it. Tonight's dinner. The moment I remembered it, my eyes narrowed, because it was after that dinner that everything started changing. At the time, nothing seemed unusual. Emily had invited me to celebrate being 1 month away from our wedding. We drank wine, talked about our future. Then she asked me to sign a document. Back then, I didn't think twice. I trusted her completely, and by the end of the night, I was too drunk to question anything. Slowly, I walked toward my office desk and turned on my laptop. If I was right, the answers were already here. For the next 2 hours, I searched through her emails, corporate records, archived documents, legal filings, everything I could find. Then finally, I found it, and my blood turned cold. The document wasn't wedding paperwork. It wasn't tax paperwork. It wasn't some harmless form for married couples. It was disguised inside a package called Future Family Asset Protection Agreement. A boring title, exactly the kind of title most people would never read carefully, including me. The document was nearly 50 pages. Most of it was harmless legal nonsense, but buried deep inside were several clauses granting Emily temporary voting authority over a portion of my shares. At first glance, it looked insignificant. In reality, it was the first step in taking control of my company. I leaned back in my chair, my hands slowly clenching into fists. The betrayal hadn't started on my wedding day. It hadn't started the week before. Emily was already working against me, right now. And tonight she would try to make me sign that document again. I smiled slowly. Not this time.
At 7 o'clock that evening, I arrived at the restaurant. It was exactly the same place, the same private room, the same table, the same expensive wine waiting on ice. Even the waiter looked familiar. For a moment, it felt like I had stepped back into my previous life. Then I saw Emily, and every good memory I ever had with her became painful. She stood up immediately. Her face lit up, the same smile that once made my heart race, the same smile that now made me sick. "Jack!" She wrapped her arms around me and kissed my cheek. For a split second, I froze, because the woman hugging me had already betrayed me. She just didn't know I knew. "I missed you," she said. I forced a smile. "I missed you too." The lie tasted bitter. Dinner began. Emily talked nonstop. The wedding, the honeymoon, the beach resort she wanted to visit, the children she hoped we'd have someday. A future she never intended to live with me. And the entire time I sat there pretending to listen, my mind kept replaying the image from my previous life. Emily standing in the airport, holding Jason's hand, smiling, happy, while I was being humiliated in front of hundreds of people. "Jack?" Her voice pulled me back. "You seem distracted." I smiled. "Just tired." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. The gesture should have felt comforting. Instead, it felt like a performance, a role she had rehearsed countless times, the perfect fiancé, the perfect future life. More wine arrived, exactly like before. Every time my glass became half empty, Emily refilled it. Every time I tried changing the topic, she redirected the conversation, smoothly, naturally, almost professionally. The more I watched her, the more terrifying she became. Because she wasn't careless or impulsive. This was planned. Every smile, every touch, every word. Planned. Finally, near the end of dinner, she opened her purse and pulled out a folder. The same folder. My heart instantly started beating faster. There it was, the first trap. Emily smiled casually. "So," she placed it on the table, "can you do me a tiny favor?" I pretended not to know what it was. "What is it?" "Oh, nothing important." Nothing important. The exact same words, the exact same smile and lie. "It's just some paperwork for the prenup our lawyer suggested." I opened the folder. The same 50 pages, hidden clauses and traps. Emily leaned closer. It's mostly future planning stuff. I nodded slowly, pretending to read, pretending to trust her. Inside, I wanted to laugh. This woman had no idea she was repeating history in front of someone who already knew the ending. She kept talking, explaining, and smiling. Meanwhile, I quietly finished another glass of wine, then another, until eventually I began acting drunk. My speech became slower, my movements less coordinated. I even knocked over a napkin. Emily immediately relaxed. I saw it happen. For the first time all evening, she looked relieved. The prey had walked into the trap, exactly as planned. She handed me a pen. I took it, pretended to struggle focusing on the pages. Then I signed. Not my signature, not even close. Just something similar enough to fool her tonight, but worthless legally, completely invalid. Emily never noticed. She simply smiled and closed the folder. Victory flashed briefly across her face. A tiny moment, less than a second, but I saw it, and that moment told me everything.
An hour later, we left the restaurant. Emily kissed me goodbye. "You should get some rest." I nodded. "Probably." She smiled warmly. Then she left. I waited, nearly 20 minutes. Then my phone vibrated. The private investigator I had hired earlier that afternoon. One message, one video. My pulse immediately quickened. I opened it and felt ice spread through my chest. Emily hadn't gone home, not even close. The video showed her walking quickly across a parking lot. Then someone stepped into view. Jason Reed. My grip tightened around the phone. Emily immediately ran toward him. Not walked, ran, like she couldn't wait another second. Then she threw her arms around his neck and kissed him. Not a friendly kiss, a kiss between lovers. A long kiss, the kind of kiss that only exists when two people have done it many times before. I watched the video once, then again, then a third time. Not because I needed confirmation, because I needed to kill the last remaining piece of mercy inside me. The part that wanted to believe there was some misunderstanding. There wasn't. Emily Parker was cheating on me, and she was doing it while planning our wedding. I closed the video. For several seconds, I sat silently inside my car. Then I laughed. A low, bitter laugh. Because in my previous life, I thought the betrayal started at the airport. I was wrong. It started long before that. The next morning, I arrived at the company. The moment I stepped off the elevator, a familiar voice called my name. "Good morning, Jack." I looked up. Sophia Bennett. For a moment, I simply stared at her. In my previous life, Sophia had been the one desperately trying to save me, the one crying as my life collapsed, and I never even got the chance to thank her. Sophia frowned. "Everything okay?" I quickly looked away. "Yeah." She studied me for a moment, then smiled. "You seem different today." If only she knew. I wasn't different. I was a man who had already lived through his own destruction, and this time I intended to make sure the people responsible paid for it. "I want a board meeting as soon as possible," I said. That night, long after everyone had gone home, I sat alone in my office. On one screen played the video of Emily kissing Jason. On the other were the documents she wanted me to sign, the evidence, the lies, the truth. I stared at both screens for a very long time, then slowly closed them, because now I finally understood something. In my previous life, I believed Emily betrayed me at the altar. I was wrong. The betrayal had already begun, and this time I was going to end it before she ever saw it coming.
The next morning, I held a board meeting. In my previous life, I never knew that Emily was managing to steal my company. Back then, I believed everything she said, blinded by love and her ability to hide her affair. Now, I know better. From what Sophia said in my previous life, one signature wasn't enough. Eventually, the board would need to approve changes. Eventually, ownership had to move through official channels. And eventually, Emily took over everything I had built. But not this time. The meeting lasted less than an hour. By the time it ended, several new company policies had been approved, additional verification procedures, extra layers of protection. Nobody thought much of it. To them, it was just another corporate decision. To me, it was the first brick in the wall I was building around my company. Emily just didn't know it yet. That afternoon, she called me. "Don't forget." I smiled. "Forget what?" "Our appointment." Her voice sounded cheerful, excited, exactly the way it had sounded in my previous life, as if she wasn't secretly sleeping with another man, as if she wasn't planning to rob me blind and preparing to abandon me at the altar. The wedding planner's waiting. Of course she was. The wedding, the same wedding that would eventually become my funeral. "I'll be there," I answered. "Love you." The words came naturally from her. Too naturally. I stared at the phone after the call ended, then slowly put it away, because hearing those words no longer made me happy. Now they only reminded me how good Emily was at lying. 2 hours later, we were sitting inside one of the most expensive wedding venues in the city. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, fresh flowers covered every table, and the event manager stood nearby explaining various packages. Emily looked absolutely fascinated. "Jack, look at this." She pointed toward a luxury decoration package. "The price alone could buy a new car." "It's beautiful," she said. I nodded. In my previous life, I had agreed immediately. Not because I cared about flowers, but because I loved seeing her happy. Now, I know exactly what I was looking at. Every decoration, every upgrade, every unnecessary expense was an extraction operation. Emily wasn't planning a future with me. She was maximizing the amount she could take before leaving. The event manager continued speaking, but Emily interrupted him 3 separate times to select even more expensive options: premium seating, imported flowers, custom lighting, additional entertainment. The bill kept growing, and every time it grew, Emily smiled wider, as if she were winning the lottery. In my previous life, I thought Emily simply wanted a perfect wedding. Now, I know the truth. She never planned to attend it. She was simply emptying my pockets before she disappeared. "Jack?" I looked up. Emily was smiling. "What do you think?" I glanced toward the newest package she had selected, another ridiculous amount. I smiled. "Looks perfect." Her eyes lit up immediately, exactly as they had in my previous life, only this time I understood what that excitement really meant. Money. Nothing more, nothing less.
After leaving the venue, Emily insisted we continue shopping. Jewelry, wedding gifts, decorations, designer items. By sunset, I had listened to her talk about our future for nearly 6 hours. Every word was a lie, and somehow that made the entire conversation surreal. I walked beside her while silently remembering the video from 2 nights earlier, the airport parking lot, Jason's arms around her waist, their kiss, the way she smiled at him. That smile had been real. Everything today was a performance. For the first time, I wondered how long she had been acting. Months? Years? The thought made my stomach turn. That evening, after dropping Emily off at her apartment, my phone vibrated. A message appeared. "Emily, today was perfect." I stared at the screen. Then another message arrived. "I can't wait to become Mrs. Carter." A slow smile appeared on my face, because while Emily was dreaming about the wedding, I was thinking about something else, the wedding day itself. In my previous life, it was the day she destroyed me, the day she humiliated my parents and stole my company, the day I died. This time, the wedding would be the day she and Jason will lose everything. Because while she spends her days planning the perfect betrayal, I am quietly planning the perfect downfall. And when that day finally arrives, only one of us would walk away smiling. 3 days later, Emily asked me for money, a lot of money. She claimed the honeymoon budget had increased again. In my previous life, I transferred it immediately. This time, I smiled and agreed anyway. Because I wasn't giving her money, I was buying evidence. The moment the transfer was completed, I called the investigator. Follow every penny. The man on the other end didn't hesitate. Understood. And for the first time since my rebirth, I felt something dangerous growing inside me. Not anger, not pain. Control. Real control. Something I never had in my previous life.
The following week, I visited the bank. In my previous life, I never paid attention to our accounts. Why would I? Emily was my fiancée, the woman I trusted more than anyone, and I was pretty wealthy to notice small transfers. I thought we were building a future together. I thought every penny spent was being spent for us. God, I was stupid. I sat across from my financial advisor and reviewed every account connected to my name: personal accounts, investment accounts, business reserves, joint accounts, everything. "Mr. Carter," the advisor said carefully, "you seem concerned." I almost laughed. Concerned? In my previous life, within 3 weeks, I would lose everything: my company, my savings, even my life. Concerned was an understatement. "I just want additional security measures." The advisor nodded. Over the next hour, we created new accounts, moved assets, separated accounts, and established additional authorization procedures. Nothing dramatic, nothing suspicious, just enough. Enough that Emily would never again have unrestricted access to my money. When I left the bank, I felt lighter, not because the danger was gone, but because this time I am not completely defenseless. 2 days later, Sophia knocked on my office door. "Busy?" I looked up. "A little." "Good," she said. Without waiting for permission, she walked inside. I couldn't help smiling. Sophia had always been like that. Direct, honest, impossible to intimidate. She dropped a folder onto my desk. "We have a problem." My smile disappeared. "What kind of problem?" "The finance department found irregular transactions." Immediately, my attention sharpened. "Show me." Sophia opened the folder. Several pages were highlighted. Transfer amounts, dates, account numbers. At first glance, nothing seemed unusual, but then I noticed the pattern. Small transfers repeated frequently, always below the threshold that would trigger automatic reviews. I looked at Sophia. "Who found these?" "I did," she answered. Of course she did. In my previous life, Sophia had probably seen the same warning signs, and I ignored them, because I trusted Emily, because I believed love was enough. Now I know better. Someone is helping her inside the company, I told myself. "Keep tracking everything." Sophia frowned, then studied me carefully. "You've changed lately." For a moment I froze, then I smiled. Maybe I'm finally paying attention. Her eyes narrowed slightly, as if she wanted to ask more questions. Instead, she nodded. "Good." Then she left. I watched the door close behind her. In my previous life, Sophia stayed until the very end. Even when everyone else abandoned me, even when the company collapsed, she stayed. And somehow, I never appreciated that enough.
That evening, my phone rang. The investigator. "What did you find?" I asked immediately. "Quite a lot." I leaned forward. "Tell me." "We traced most of the money Emily requested," he said. "And," I interrupted, "it never went to wedding vendors," he answered. Not surprising. "It moved through 3 separate accounts," he added. My grip tightened. "Then where?" A brief silence. Then he said, "Jason Reed." I closed my eyes. Of course, always Jason. The investigator continued. "The money eventually reached an account connected to one of his companies. Companies, plural. That caught my attention. What companies?" "We're still investigating," he answered. "Keep going," I ordered. "There is something else," he said before I hung up. My stomach tightened. "What?" Then he continued, "The transfers didn't start recently." I froze. "What do you mean?" He dropped it. "They've been happening for months, few weeks after Jason's return from abroad." Months, not weeks. Months. Suddenly, dozens of memories resurfaced. Emily asking for a new car, requesting payments, claiming unexpected expenses, even needing money for wedding preparations. Each time I agreed. Each time I trusted her. Each time she smiled and thanked me. And each time she was moving my money somewhere else. I felt sick. Not because of the money, but because of the lies and the audacity. How many times had she looked me in the eyes while stealing from me? How many times had she kissed me afterward? How many times had she told me she loved me? The investigator interrupted my thoughts. "There's more." I opened my eyes. "What now?" He said, "The money isn't being spent." I frowned. Then he continued, "It's accumulating." "Accumulating? For what? Do you know why?" I asked. "No," the investigator hesitated, "but whatever they're planning, it's expensive." The call ended a few minutes later, but I couldn't stop thinking about that sentence. Expensive. Very expensive. The money wasn't funding vacations. It wasn't funding luxury purchases. It wasn't funding a secret life. It was building towards something. Something bigger. Something I still couldn't see. 3 nights later, another report arrived. This time it wasn't from the investigator, it was from Sophia. I opened the file expecting financial summaries. Instead, I found something else, a list of companies, several of them highlighted. I immediately recognized one name, Reed Enterprises. My eyes narrowed. I turned the page, then another, then another. Each company was somehow connected through investments or partnerships, and all of them led back to the same person, Jason. My pulse accelerated, because suddenly a terrible possibility entered my mind. What if Jason never cared about Emily? What if Emily wasn't his goal? What if I was? I slowly leaned back in my chair. For the first time since my rebirth, I felt genuinely unsettled, because if I was right, then Emily wasn't the mastermind. She was just another piece on the board, and somewhere in the shadows, someone was moving the pieces, someone far more dangerous than I had imagined. Then my phone vibrated. A message from Emily. "I miss you." I stared at the screen for several seconds, then laughed, because while she was sending heart emojis, I was discovering the blueprint of the trap she helped build, and every new piece of evidence brought me closer to the day when the entire thing would collapse on top of her.
1 week before the wedding, I realized something. Emily wasn't nervous. She wasn't worried. She wasn't afraid of being caught. If anything, she was becoming more confident every day. And honestly, that made sense. From her perspective, everything was working perfectly. I was still planning the wedding, answering her calls, and even transferring money when she asked. I had no idea about her and Jason. As far as Emily knew, I was still the same man she had manipulated for months, the perfect fool. And that illusion was exactly what I wanted. The day after, I got in a car accident. In my previous life, the accident happened 6 days before the wedding and cost me several injuries and an entire day trapped in a hospital bed. I remembered every detail: the truck, the impact, the ambulance, the hospital. And while I was lying there helpless, Emily took the opportunity to present the document she made me sign before to claim shares of my company. Back then, I had no idea of that, but this life is different. So when I approached that same intersection, I was already paying attention. The collision still happened, but not the way it had before. I managed to reduce any damage. Metal screamed, glass shattered, but almost no pain, just superficial wounds. A few hours later, I was lying in a hospital room, sore but no damage, much better than my first life. I insisted that I would need observation for all the day as it was in my previous life. Now that I noticed Emily had never called me or visited me, of course she is busy in the company, I immediately reached for my phone, because I knew exactly what day it was and exactly what Emily was planning. The moment Sophia answered, I got straight to the point. Is she there? Sophia didn't need clarification. Over the past few weeks, she had learned more than I ever intended to tell her. Not everything, but enough. Yes, she answered. My jaw tightened. What's happening? She arrived an hour ago, Sophia said quietly. I closed my eyes, just like the first life, except this time I was ready. For the next 2 hours, Sophia became my eyes, my ears, my connection to everything happening inside the company. She updated me constantly. Board members entering, Emily arriving, documents being presented, every detail, every movement. And then it happened. The moment I had been waiting for. Sophia's voice came through the phone. She submitted the transfer request. I looked toward the hospital ceiling. The same request that destroyed me in my previous life. The same forged authorization, except this time, the signature wasn't real. A signature that could never survive legal scrutiny. A signature that would eventually become evidence, not protection, evidence. What's happening now? I asked. She paused, then laughed softly. They approved it as you instructed in the last meeting. I smiled, for the first time all day. Emily thought she had won. The board appeared to approve everything. The paperwork moved forward. The transfer process was done exactly as she wanted, and exactly as I planned, because every step she took pushed her deeper into the trap. That night, after leaving the hospital, I received a call from the investigator. I got something. His voice sounded excited. What? I asked. A recording, he answered. Immediately, I sat upright. What kind of recording? Then he said, the kind you're going to want to hear. A few minutes later, the file arrived. I pressed play. At first, there was background noise, music, people talking, glasses clinking. Then I heard Emily's voice, and Jason's. Emily sounded happy, excited, almost relieved. We're finally close. Jason laughed. Very close. Then Emily asked the question that changed everything. What do you think we'll do first? Jason didn't hesitate. We sell. Silence. Then Emily laughed. You really want to sell immediately? Of course. His answer came so quickly that even I noticed it. Not, we'll start our life together. Not, we'll get married. No, his first thought was money. Always money. Emily didn't seem to notice. She kept talking. We're going to be rich. Jason laughed again. Very rich. The recording continued for another 10 minutes, and every minute revealed the same thing: money. Jason talked about profits, investments, buyers, valuations. Not once did he talk about love. Not once did he talk about Emily. The only person in that conversation talking about a future together was her. Jason only cared about the payday. And for the first time, I almost felt sorry for Emily. Almost. Then I remembered the church, the airport, the company, the lies, the theft, and the feeling disappeared. 2 days before the wedding, the 4 of us met in a private office. Me, Sophia, the investigator, and a lawyer. Boxes of evidence covered the conference table. Financial records, bank transfers, photos, videos, recordings, corporate documents. Enough paper to destroy multiple careers. For nearly 3 hours, we reviewed everything, every detail, every timeline, every connection, making sure nothing was missing. Finally, the lawyer closed the final folder. The room became quiet. I looked at him. Well? The lawyer smiled. A slow smile, the kind of smile you only see when the outcome is already decided. Then tapped the stack of evidence in front of him. The smile widened. This is enough to destroy them. Silence filled the room. I looked down at the evidence, then toward the wedding invitation sitting on the table. 2 days. Only 2 days remained. In my previous life, I spent those final days preparing myself for the wedding. This time, I spent them preparing for the downfall of Emily and everyone who helped. The morning of the wedding finally arrived. The same day that had destroyed my life in the previous timeline. The same day I had died. This time, I stood alone in front of the mirror inside my hotel suite, adjusting my tie, staring at my reflection, remembering. The church, the guests, the humiliation, my mother's tears, my father's silence, the pain in my chest, the darkness and death. A month ago, I had woken up with one wish, one chance, one opportunity to change everything. Today, I was finally standing at the end of that road. My phone vibrated. A message from Sophia. 3 words. It's happening. I smiled. The game had begun. Across town, Emily Parker was having the best morning of her life, or at least that's what she believed. She stood inside her honeymoon dress, surrounded by her bags. Everything was perfect. Today she would leave Jack Carter behind forever. Today she would finally be with Jason, her first and unique love. Her phone rang. Jason. She answered immediately. Good morning. Everything ready? His voice sounded excited. Almost, she answered. Good. Today was the final step. The shares, the money, the sale. Everything they had been planning for months. Jason lowered his voice. The buyer is ready. Emily's smile widened. Perfect. All they had to do was finalize the transfer, then disappear. By the time Jack understood what happened, it would be too late. At least, that's what they thought. 30 minutes later, at the first crack appeared. The lawyers called. At first, Emily wasn't worried. Then the lawyer spoke. There is a problem. Emily frowned. What problem? He said, the ownership transfer is invalid. Emily fell in deep silence. The shares are not registered under your name, the lawyer added. Her smile vanished. What are you talking about? Then the lawyer explained. The documents submitted to the board were rejected during legal verification. Rejected? Impossible. The board approved everything. She had watched it happen. Jason grabbed the phone. What do you mean rejected? The signature failed verification, he added. Jason's face turned pale. Emily felt her stomach drop. No, that couldn't be right. The transfer was never completed, the lawyer continued. What about the shares? Emily demanded. You don't own any shares, the lawyer answered. The room fell silent. Months of planning, manipulation, and lies, gone. Jason slammed his fist against the table. That's impossible. The lawyer sighed. I'm looking at the records right now. The shares never belonged to you. The call ended. Panic arrived. Emily's hands shook. Jason's anger erupted. Do you realize how much money we just lost? Emily felt something cold settle in her stomach. Money. Not us. Not our future. Just money. And suddenly a terrifying thought entered her mind. What if Jack knew? Her blood ran cold. Jack! Jason stopped. What? Emily whispered. Jack knows. 1 hour later, Emily stormed toward the wedding venue. She wasn't thinking anymore. She wasn't planning or celebrating. She was furious. Every answer she needed pointed toward one person, me. Meanwhile, guests filled the church, hundreds of people, family, friends, business partners, exactly like my previous life. I stood at the altar, calm, waiting, the same place where my life ended, except today was different. Today, I wasn't the victim. Today, I was the one holding the knife. The doors opened. Emily entered. Not smiling, not emotional, angry, very angry. The guests noticed immediately. Confused whispers spread through the room. She walked straight toward me. What did you do? Her voice trembled. The audience looked shocked. I smiled, the exact same smile she once wore while destroying my life. What are you talking about? Stop pretending. Her eyes burned with rage. You knew. The room fell silent, every guest watching and listening. I looked at her for a few seconds, then nodded. Yes. The color drained from her face. She stepped backward, because at that moment she understood. I knew about Jason, the money, even the shares. I knew about all of it. I turned toward the large screen prepared for the ceremony. Before this wedding begins, there is something everyone deserves to see. The screen lit up, and hell began. The first video appeared, Emily kissing Jason. The room gasped. The second video appeared, another meeting, more betrayal. Guests stared in disbelief. Some covered their mouths, others pulled out their phones. Then came the financial records, the money transfers, the secret accounts, every piece of evidence, every lie, every crime, displayed for everyone to see. Emily's face turned white, completely white. No! People stared at her now, not with admiration, but with disgust, shock, and disbelief. The perfect bride was gone. The monster underneath had finally been exposed. Then the church doors opened again. Jason entered, terrified. For one brief second, Emily looked relieved, as if he had come to save her. Then police officers entered behind him. The relief vanished instantly. "Jason Reed," an officer announced. Jason froze. "You are under arrest." Chaos erupted. Guests shouted. Phones recorded everything. Another officer approached Emily. Her body trembled. "What is this?" "Emily Parker, you are under arrest for fraud, conspiracy, forgery, and financial theft." She stared at the warrant, unable to process the words. A third officer escorted another man into the church, one of our accountants, the same one who helped move money and hid transactions. Everything had completely collapsed publicly and irreversibly. Emily turned toward me, tears filling her eyes. For the first time since I met her, she looked genuinely afraid. "You knew." I nodded. "I'm sorry. I used the exact same words she said to me in my previous life." Her voice broke. "For how long?" I looked at her, the woman I once planned to spend my life with, the woman who killed me, the woman who destroyed everything. Then I answered, "Long enough." Tears rolled down her face because she finally understood the truth. For weeks she thought she was manipulating me, thought she was winning, and believed she was smarter. Meanwhile, every step she took had only tightened the trap around her, and now there was no escape. The officers moved her toward the exit. She looked back one final time, but I wasn't looking at her anymore. I was looking at the altar, the same altar where I died, the same place where my story ended and began again.